Yeah, welcome, please. For those of you standing, I encourage you to come forward, have a seat. I'm sure there's going to be late stragglers, so please be comfortable. Anyway, my name is Kim Owens. I am the program director here at the Seattle Architecture Foundation, and I'm so happy to welcome you to tonight's event, Because It Rains, How the Rain Shapes Seattle. And so I always like to ask this question before we get started. How many of you are in the architecture, design, construction, engineering realm? Raise your hand. All right, and how many of you do something completely different? Awesome. That's like 50-50. That's pretty solid. Yeah, like I'm an anthropologist, so I don't do math, but that looks all right. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the space we're in. We lovingly call it CFAD, because that's short for the Center of Architecture and Design, which is a mouthful. But anyway, here in CFAD, this is a shared space between the Seattle Architecture Foundation, or SAF, AIA Seattle, Design in Public, and AIA Washington Council. In this space is really neat. We do exhibits, programs, and have conversations that explore design's role in shaping cities. CFAD is made possible thanks to all of those wonderful donors that are on that board at the front. So you can check them out later if you want. I would also like to thank our sponsors. At the diamond level, we have LMN Architects. MG2 is our platinum sponsor, and our gold level sponsors are Harkis Engineering INC, MacDonald Miller Facility Solutions, Morrison, Harefield, and Skillinger Bender S. Our grant maker is for culture, and I'd also really like to thank Monica Guzman and the Evergrey for being our promotional partner. We really appreciate support from these sponsors because they make tonight's events like tonight's possible. I mean, because of them, we are able to do these for free. I mean, Seattle Architecture Foundation is a nonprofit organization, and so it means a lot to us when we can give back to our community free of charge. And so we also would like to tell you a little bit about our membership. If you aren't a member, I encourage you to consider it. You get discounts to programs, you get invitations to special events. Great benefits for you, but it also helps us achieve our mission of connecting people to Seattle's history, architecture, and design. And we'd like to tell you that to get a sneak peek of our upcoming tour season, we're offering free tours May 4th and 5th. So it's a Saturday, Sunday. You can go to our website, check them out. It's a lot of fun. I don't know how many of you have been on our tours before. Yes? Maybe? Anyway, check them out. They're fun. Anyway, that's enough about me. It's enough about us. Let's get to what we're all really here to do. The purpose of tonight's panel is to share stories and experiences, how rain and its unique characteristics have shaped the built environment in Seattle today, and looking towards the future, how today's built environment can respond differently. To get things started, please help me in welcoming our moderator, Olson Kundig Architect, and Because It Rains exhibit curator, Laura Arkin.
So why are we here to talk about rain? Kind of a unique subject for an architectural foundation. So I received this traveling fellowship from the AIA last year, and my prompt was to study projects that had been inspired or responded differently to rain. And I think it's best if I kind of start at the beginning and tell you how this idea evolved or where this idea came from. And it started with, basically emerged from a conversation I had in the office with one of the principals, his name's Jerry Garcia. And he had just given a lecture about how the office, focusing on the office's work, but just talking about the work through the details that respond to the weather. So like a drip edge or an overhang or a downspout. And I just thought, gosh, that's the best idea, to focus just on these moments in time, and in a way you can express the kind of ethos of the office in terms of our attitude around aesthetics or how we engage with our environment. But it also got me wondering about, well, have there been any projects in the world that have used weather as a creative catalyst for design versus a detail? And that's where the idea came from. But I soon discovered that, how do I say this? Before we can design with rain, we have to understand what rain is. And rain it's individual and it's specific to its place. So this notion of going out and actually studying rain's nuances and characteristics through the lens of architecture. And so I chose to go to 5 locations. The first was to Florida to experience the summer rains. I don't know if anybody's from Florida here. Oh, yeah, you know it. Yeah. And then to New Mexico to chase kind of the North American monsoon that rolls through every summer. And then to Kauai to understand why the Hawaiian language has over 200 words for rain, which I found totally fascinating. The next step was to London to experience artificial rain used to create space. It's in this beautiful little museum in central London. And then the final stop was Bergen, Norway, to what is rumored to be Europe's rainiest city, and it has the nickname of being Seattle's sister city. Even though most people in Seattle don't know what Bergen is. But anyway, along the way, obviously, I had to do something architectural, so there are a series of basically case studies that I found within each one of those destinations that kind of looked at rain uniquely, or looked at their rain uniquely. And so that's kind of what prompted, or those case studies are found in this exhibit. But I think what's really interesting is after this journey, the question I got asked the most was, well, did you find, what inspired you, or did you find an architectural project that kind of looked at rain differently? And honestly, not really. That kind of made me a little bit sad, but the notion of why aren't we talking about rain differently as designers? And perhaps in challenging how we maybe speak or think about our weather, we can find, different ways of designing for it. And so that's kind of what prompted the panel discussion today. Nick, where is he at? Nick Funaro put together, there he is. He put together this panelist, and the idea was to take this rain energy or rain research and focus it back on Seattle and ask different creatives in the city to talk about how rain has influenced or inspired their own work. So on that note, I'm going to butcher your names. I already apologize for that. So I'm going to introduce our panelists, and they're going to speak to their own work. So we have Peregrine Church, who is an artist and the founder of Rainworks. Monica Guzman, who is the co-founder and director of The Evergrey. John Sundstrom, yes, the chef and owner of Lark and Slab Sandwiches plus Pie, and Southpaw. And then I can already apologize for Jordan. Jordan Slotoff.
Perfect.
Oh, brilliant. Who is the landscape architect at Burger Partnership. So, hand it over to Peregrine.
Hey, that's my name. I'm Peregrine Church. I'm the founder of a company called Rainworks. Rainworks are pieces of street art that appear when it gets wet. So here's a quick demonstration. On the left is a piece of concrete that's dry, but when it gets wet, this hopscotch appears. It's pretty nifty. Our whole mission is to turn rainy days from something dreary into something to look forward to. I got this idea like around 2013, 2014. And with the help of my business partner, Zach, he's actually right there. Everybody say hi, Zach.
Hi,
Hello. We got started, I told him about the idea, and we got started just trying to make them. Long story short, we just started making them around Seattle a whole bunch, and then it went viral, and which was a real trippy experience. And then a whole bunch of people started asking us, hey, this is awesome, how can we make our own? And so we launched ourselves into a Kickstarter. It was not our goal to start a business, but it sort of happened, and now we make our living based on making people's rainy days more interesting and enabling other artists to do the same in other communities, which is pretty awesome. This is me and Zach on the largest rainwork we've ever made, which is actually in Indiana. It's a huge mandala. And here's the type that we usually make. We make little things at bus stops and whatever just to make people smile. And rainworks are now all over the world. Here's a quick map. screenshot I took just to sort of show off where they all are. But yeah, the basic premise behind it, if you're wondering how they work, is we have a special hydrophobic coating that we spray through a stencil onto concrete. Concrete gets darker when it gets wet, but what the spray does is it keeps it from getting wet. So next time rain falls, everywhere turns dark like normal except for where we sprayed, and the contrast creates the image. That pretty much sums up Brainworks for now. I'll hand it off to Monica.
Okay, so hello. Yeah, look at that. Magical. So I am the director of the Evergrey. The Evergrey is a daily newsletter in Seattle. I see some head nods. Some folks subscribe. I see a couple. Yeah, we are a newsletter that helps Seattleites make the most of their city. And people asked us in the beginning, the Evergrey, what is that? We actually tested the name, and people either loved it or hated it. We had other names that people were okay with, but nah, that's not fun. Let's pick one of the ones they either loved or hated. But the Evergrey, the name and the approach is to be honest about where we live. And yes, it is gray most of the year. And yes, gray is considered a depressing and dull color. And yes, the rain is considered a depressing and dull weather pattern. But actually, it is a blanket of warmth over this part of the country. It has completely affected and formed Seattle's culture. And my job in part is to try to understand Seattle's culture so that we can serve it as well as we can, represent it as well as we can, and then help people connect to it as well as we can. And the weather is everything about Seattle. So I'm excited to talk more about that. That's our logo. So yeah, we try to help people have fun with the city. I think there's a couple rain-related things here on Seattle Bingo. Puffer coat. Wait, yep, there's that one. There's a dog with a rain jacket somewhere in there. Someone with an umbrella. Oh yeah, walking in the rain without an umbrella, that's pretty normal. Definitely a sign of a visitor in Seattle, stereotypically someone who even bothers to carry an umbrella. But yeah, we like to have fun with the city, and we try to also host a lot of discussions. This is a screenshot from a video project we did a year and a half ago that was asking what it even means to be a Seattleite. And one of my favorite responses came from someone named Minda, who said that you know you're a Seattleite when you're no longer waiting for it to stop raining to go outside and grill, or to go garden, or to do anything. You just go, because that's how it is here. That's just the way it's going to be, and that's part of the mark of a Seattleite. It's almost like a battle scar. Like, I love the rain. What? I'm local. What are you? So there's definitely something to that. And we also try to give people opportunities to get together around town. This was an event we did just last week that was fantastic over at WeWork. And we'll probably talk a little bit about how the rain affects Seattle's indoor culture. I don't think it's an accident that we have such a strong coffee shop culture and a sense of a third place. I think that's very much related to the weather. So that's me. We'll get to more things later.
Thanks so much. I'm John Sundstrom. I own a couple restaurants on Capitol Hill. Lark is the first one. We've been open 15 years. And then we've got a couple of little places mentioned. So I've been cooking in Seattle 20 plus years. Worked for Tom Douglas for a while, worked around town, a lot of places. But I grew up in Utah, and I think one of the things that will probably come up for me tonight is this idea that the season is different here. The seasons are different. And I put a cookbook out a couple of years ago, and my winter chapter is called Mist. So, I kind of divided the year into 3 seasons. There's the mist season, which is our long, cold, wet, rainy winter, which is November to April. And then we've got an evergreen season, which we're just starting to get into, which is sort of our spring, which is almost as long. And then the bounty season, which is our very quick and intense summer, August to October is kind of how I think of it. And certainly my relationship with the weather has a lot more to do with what grows when. So again, growing up, I expected corn in June or July and tomatoes at the same time and things like that. And as a young cook in Seattle, I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm so excited tomatoes are coming, or so I'm looking forward to the next season's change. And I'd be waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the sun to break through and to make things happen. And it really took a long time to kind of wrap my mind around that. And pretty much when I became the chef of restaurants and had to really write menus and really made a commitment to supporting local farmers and local growers, I really had to get into it now. So that's kind of what my focus has been the last 10, 15 years as a restaurant owner and chef, is to really figure out the Northwest and what happens when and why, and also to invoke, you know, sort of the mood that we want to have happen. So certainly when we get into, you know, you cook differently in August than you do in November or February. You know, in a lot of ways, I feel like my cooking is deeper in the cold, wet months versus, you know, summertime, when it's just you go out and you hit the farmer's market and you pick some things and they're perfect and you throw a piece of salmon on the grill and it's done. You know, it's delicious, but the cooking is not so intense. It's not as deep. So I feel like the rain really drives, I think, another layer of creativity with chefs in Seattle, and hopefully people cook at home. So I've also made a big effort to really just get out there, and I really like the idea of, you know, I think like a lot of people coming from a sunny place, I was living in California before I moved to Washington, but first you're like, oh man, what's the deal with this? You know, it is 7 or 8 months of gray and such, but I've really made an effort to try to just embrace the culture that's here and recognize how special it is. You know, so I've learned to razor clam and go out in, you know, March or April when it's happening. And so you're going to be out there in your full gear, in the rain, at 5 in the morning, or at, you know, whatever's happening to make it happen. And that's part of the joy and the beauty of it. So and amazing things come out of that. So and then something like, you know, we're in this evergreen season right now. The reason we're going to have amazing, you know, morels or porcinis popping up in the next month is because we're having amazing rain right now, or weather happening. So, you know, just learning to embrace it and I think just find the joy in it. So.
All right. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Jordan Zlotsoff. I am a landscape architect at Burger Partnership. And just to kind of back up a little bit, you know, originally my background was in ecology before I was a landscape architect and more in the science field, and then ended up doing this study in Portland about all the stormwater treatment methods that they were using there. And this was a long while ago, but that's where I originally got exposed to landscape architecture and got so inspired by all the different cool ways that people were dealing with that, with the stormwater, quote unquote, which is kind of the nerdy way of saying rain. And so, yeah, so that kind of launched me on my landscape architecture path, and, you know, looking at rain now and kind of seeing this exhibit and thinking about all the drawings and things like that was very inspired. And just, you know, I have to say, with what we do, I would say pretty much everything that we do is touched by rain in some way or another, either figuratively or literally. I mean, we're outside, and the work that we do has to deal with that environment and be able to respond to how the water is going to affect it and impact it and things like that. So I put together a few slides of images here, just and kind of as I was thinking about all the different things. I'm not going to talk about every picture, but just it kind of started to coalesce into a few different categories for me of how landscape architecture and rain interact. And so the first category was kind of the way that we think about collecting and expressing that collection and dispersion of rain and moving it through the landscape. So these are a few different images of different ways that's been done. Again, more of the expression and movement through landscape. And even one more, and this one's more about kind of the treatment of rain and kind of slowing it down. With the city, we have a lot of hills here, so as rain moves through the landscape, we need to contain it and slow it down and keep it from eroding all the surfaces. So these are a number of different methods for that. And then the next one was kind of play and engaging with the rain. And so these are a couple different images of schools and parks that my office has done. And then this one is more about protecting ourselves from the rain, or being able to occupy the space outside while it's raining. And I think that's an important aspect of being a person in Seattle during the rainy months, is being able to be outside, but also be underneath something and enjoying the weather, but not getting wet. And then there's kind of the infrastructural level. For us, we do a lot of work with that. So thinking about how we deal with the rain once it comes down, and how it gets collected and either stored and reused, or transmitted back into the Puget Sound in a clean way. So there's some images about that. And then these are more about the natural kind of forms that different rain, that we kind of manage the rain and collect it and let it become its more natural self, I guess, in the sense of wetlands and green roofs. And then just some materials that I kind of put together based on what rain inspires us to use in the landscape. So I'm sure we'll maybe refer back to these later. But.
Cool. Awesome. So we're gonna, actually I should start by saying, I think this is always more interesting when it feels collective and conversation based. So if you have questions along the way.
Use the mic.
Oh wait, I'm supposed to use the mic. Please just raise your hand or just shout it out, and yeah. So have to refer to my question list here. So I think it'd be great to just start, I mean, we already touched on it, but starting with this how we define rain, especially in Seattle, how Seattle defines rain, and how you think basically it affects the ethos of Seattle. Yeah? I'm like already handing it to you.
Yeah. Okay, so fun fact, PEMCO did a survey of thousands of Washingtonians and I think folks in Oregon, and 16% of respondents say they love our wet winters, like love. Absolutely love, I think was actually the phrase. And more than half of people said they were okay with the climate, that it's good by them. And there is, if you want to read a fun Medium post, sometime around October is the best time to do this, but Google a man named Lee Lefevre, who wrote an essay called, I think it's Ready for Rain, and it goes viral every October in Seattle. And it's because right around then is sort of the tipping point from occasional rain at the end of summer to like, we're here, that's it, we're just gonna be wet forever. And he talks about how much he looks forward to it, and that it took him years living here before that clicked. It clicked for me when I was between 5 and 7 years in Seattle. I don't remember exactly when, but it was sometime toward the end of summer. And I remember I stepped outside in my flip-flops, and I smelled the air, and I was like, and I went back inside and got my boots. And I was so excited, like it's boot weather, here we go. And I didn't realize there's a smell, but there is a change. It's like a binary. You're either in one season or you're in the other season. And what Lee talks about in his essay is that it's not just about the arrival of rain. It's an entirely different environment and lifestyle in Seattle. It's a coziness, it's a turn to the indoors. It's a time when, if you are new to the city, it's going to be harder for you to make connections because people have retreated a little bit. But if you are comfortable with the retreats, or you have found your tribe, or you have, staked those relationships, or you know where to go, your regular bar or coffee shop or whatever, there's ways to be quite cozy and quite comfortable. And then he even talks about in the summer, when it's not the rainy season, there's this intense pressure to be outside in the sun, be outside, be outside. I've been here a dozen years, and before that, I had no idea. It's like this obsession, right, in the beginning of the summer. Like, oh my God, we gotta go outside, guys, go. It's the sun, oh my God. So it's this precious time, and then how many hikes are you planning? Are you making the most of it? And so even then, when it switches in October back to this cozy time, it's sort of a relief and a release. Like, okay, I can just relax. I can just go back to the thing. So yeah, I think that one of the ways that people There are two things that everyone agrees is great about Seattle. There's a lot of disagreement right now. But two things people agree on is that we have beautiful natural landscapes and terrain. And another thing is that we are very creative. And I think you were saying about creativity. There's something about kind of being holed in a little bit and having to share space, with other people, hopefully. You have to kind of make your own fun. And I think that there's a lot of Seattle's creativity and maker culture and all of that arises just from the fact that, you don't want to go outside. You just don't. And so you're going to be in here, and maybe you're going to meet up with a friend. The other thing that I find is very true about Seattle is we put a very high premium on relationships. I was a technology reporter for many years, and one of the big complaints in the tech scene about Seattle is that we're terrible marketers. We're very bad self-promoters. And I think a lot of that has to do with we really value authentic relationships. We value that relationships take time to build, and then once they're there, we like them. We really, really do. That's why the Seattle freeze is kind of a thing. It's like, I've got my people. I don't need you. I've got my people. So that authenticity of relationships, that depth, I think also comes from this, this huddling up that we do. I've been to Miami a couple times, and you can't think of a more opposite city. Everyone's in the spotlight all the time, and the spotlight is called the sun. And everyone works out, and everyone's in their bathing suits, and there's color, and there's flash, and whatever. And Seattle is just the most unpretentious place. Because, hey, we live in this. This is my, this was the best. When I realized, I'm finally local, I finally get the rain. Forever, I had all these clothy flats, these terrible flat shoes that got wet every time I walked downtown, and I was just in denial about, no, you need the right gear. You just need the right gear. So when I finally got this North Face jacket, I live in this thing. I just walk around like I own this city. I'm like, yeah, bring it, rain. This hood is just forward enough that you are never going to get to me. And I've got my boots, and then this is long enough that I can sit on a wet bus stop. So we're cool. I finally figured it out. So there's a way to be equipped, but it takes a while. It takes a while for that to come.
That was really good. Keep going. No, so I think, does anybody else have a response to how they view the rain in Seattle, or a tale to tell?
So I guess one thing I just wanted to kind of add into that discussion is, for me, the way I perceive rain in Seattle is almost more like a looming thing. It's not necessarily raining at the time that you're outside or that you're about to go outside, but you know that it could, and at least most of the year you kind of have to think about that and plan for that, and just be aware of that. And again, I'm not a Seattle native, so it took me a little while to start to gain the respect for that and understand that process, but just kind of the promise of rain and the looming aspect of it in Seattle is, I think, an important component to how rain affects the city and this area. And also just thinking about the shared experience of the rain in the city is another piece that I think is so important, and you kind of touched on that a lot, so I'm not going to go into it, but I feel like that's something that we kind of celebrate together, and people kind of gather around the fact after it's been raining for 2 weeks straight for those big long duration storms, the atmospheric river as they call it, and then at the end of it you're like, oh, we got through that, and everyone can kind of gather around that and be celebrating that.
I like that you called it the atmospheric river versus a stream or something. It is rather a mass that hits the city. Do you find, I'm a native Seattleite, grew up, know this type of rain really well, but is there a sense of disappointment in the rain when you come from a different location?
I'll try to tackle that, I guess. I would say certainly the first few, so again, I've been here 25 years, grew up in the West, and so the show is actually really resonant because, you're New Mexico and southern Utah, I used to go camping in the desert, and so that idea of summer, when I grew up with the rain, is very violent, sudden rain. You would see lightning, you'd hear thunder, and we grew up I lived up near Park City for a while when I was a kid, and you know, you do the thing where you count how far away it is based on the sound and then the lightning, and then suddenly it would be on you, and it was intense rain. And you know, again, I had never experienced like Florida rain or something like that, but it was very very different. And the first thing you would notice would be the scent, because the rain would be hitting miles away, and it would push, you know, the atmosphere, I think, would come to you, you'd smell it, and it was a very different thing. You'd all that ozone, and then the power would go out, and then you'd light the candles, and it was almost a summer ritual, and it was awesome. Whereas coming here, you know, it's sort of this slow burn, you know, it's this gradual thing, and then, and certainly, I think this speaks more to like that Kauai idea, where it's like, there's a lot of different kind of rain here, you know, so I do think of it as cool and misty, and you know, not that violent rain storm of the West, but you can also operate in it, which is great. You know, you can still go out and do things and enjoy, you know, this amazing place we live in. I wanted to just speak to that sort of that pressure that happens that you mentioned in these articles, like, because that really happens for us in the kitchen, you know, because you are kind of always waiting for things to happen. So like right now we're kind of using a lot of wild ingredients, things that come out of the mountains, you know, wild watercress and fiddleheads and things like that. But we're always kind of waiting for the next thing as cooks. And so, you know, asparagus is coming up next, or local strawberries or whatever. But when summertime really comes and the rain kind of goes away, and all of the things just go crazy with the sunshine and the heat, you get this like tsunami of products coming to the restaurant from all the farms, and it's awesome, but it is often overwhelming. You're just like, you want to change the menu, you want to use everything, I guess, and it's sort of that urgency of like, okay, it's here, we really need to take advantage of it, so we're going to use zucchini and corns and green beans and 20 kinds of basils and just all the berries, and suddenly you just realize you have this restaurant full of things, and you're kind of like, okay, we got to get busy. I hope we're really cranking busy so we can sell all this stuff. But then there's another thing that happens where you realize, okay, we are not going to have any of this come January, so let's start preserving. So we start pickling things, and canning things, and freezing things. And so for me, there's a real, you know, and again, it's all driven by the rain. You know, it's like it's sort of like it hits the ground, and then we get all these amazing things that grow out of it, and then we catch it on the rebound. And so, but I certainly understand that urgency where it's like, it's here now, you have to go for it. And then you do sort of relax when it kind of starts, okay, the last tomato delivery is happening this week. And you're kind of bummed out, but you're also kind of relieved, because it's like, okay, we've just been using tomatoes for like 90 days straight. You know? So it's that thing where it's like, it's so great, you have to embrace it when it's happening, but then you're also just a little bit like, okay, let's just focus on hard squashes, you know, or pears. So your palette of ingredients really shifts dramatically in a restaurant that really tries to use local ingredients. So, you know, again, where it's like you've got a pretty constant palette of ingredients for your projects, for my projects, it's shifting constantly, and especially driven by the weather. So.
It's really interesting to talk about, the products that come from rain. And this might be a question just for you again, but does rain shape the atmosphere for a mood, or mood for a meal, in a way? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, you know, again, going back to the idea of, you know, winter is coming, you know, I definitely start to get a sense for that. And oftentimes I'm projecting ahead, you know, in September, people are already writing us about Christmas parties, or, you know, maybe we're doing a wild game menu in November. So usually I'm trying to think ahead, like what's going to happen in November, what's going to happen in January when I'm writing menus. And you do start to think about, okay, well, you know, it's truffle season, so truffles are, you know, that starts to shift the way you're going to think about creating a menu, or what kind of food you're going to cook or make. You know, again, I don't just have corn and peppers and tomatoes at hand. It's rutabagas, and it's going to be potatoes, and it's going to be, you know, maybe something like that. So it really has an impact on that, and I do think it does. It changes your mindset. You know, you're going to go from rosé to, you know, big hearty Barolo, and you want to light a fire in the fireplace, and, you know, kind of echoing that idea of hunkering down, getting cozy, but you're also going to spend your whole Sunday cooking a great meal. You know, it's like quick farmer's market, you know, roasted lamb or something, and you're going to put it in your kind of weather, Le Creuset, and then, you know, go to a movie and come back and it's ready, or just, you know, read the New York Times, whatever it is. So there's definitely a shift that happens, I think. So.
Playing off that note, this idea of atmosphere and mood, does that find its way into how you think about shaping like landscape design and starting a project that maybe is based in Seattle? Because even though we feel like Seattle is misty, there's still a diversity of rain that occurs within the city or within the landscape.
Sure.
Is that a tricky one?
A little bit. So yeah, I think, well, I would say, I mean, for sure, the general atmosphere of Seattle and kind of the weather patterns and the lighting, I think here in particular, is something that we recognize as designers and you know, people who are working in the construction field. Is just, you know, there's a palette of color that we feel like is more harmonious with that than maybe, you know, certain other colors. So I feel like when we're picking our colors, we tend to stick with more muted tones maybe, or things like that, or maybe one like bright pop of color that kind of like can sort of like jump out at you, but it's not trying to you know, clash with some of the light. I mean, it's just sort of this, I mean, it's very hard for me to even describe because it's more of a sense of what feels right in the context of the type of lighting that we have here and experience. So I feel like that gets a little bit at your question. I think there's also just the nature of, you know, some of the imagery that I had before about the play aspect of rain and trying to engage with the rain and you know, making that something that that we actively participate with and not something that's just like, you know, you get it into a drain and it goes away and that's it, that's the end of it, where you kind of slow it down a little bit. You put it through a runnel and celebrate it, let it be visible before it goes into the drain, or even store it and either reuse it for something else, like, you know, we can reuse it for water here, for irrigation, for landscape, or we can, you know, we've done projects where we put it into a cistern and then it gets held and cycled through a water feature or something like that, or even where it becomes a temporary water feature that's only present for maybe the next day or 3 days or something like that before it dries out and becomes just you know, a regular area of paving again. So all these different options, and you know, some of that certainly ties in with.
I was just about to say, you're like, you really want the mic right now. I got to. Well, I think it's this notion of playing with rain, right? So like, how do you approach doing?
So you want to actively participate with rain. I have an idea. Yeah, that is what our company is really built on. I feel like for a lot of people, whether some people love the rain, some people hate the rain, but I feel like for a lot of people, they, especially in Seattle, they just sort of forget about the rain. It's just sort of a background object. You know, you go on with your day, you go on with your life. But in a little subtle way, the rain in the evergray sort of affects a lot of people's mood. Some people get what they call SAD, or seasonal affective disorder, where your mood drops, especially during the colder, drearier, grayer winter months. And one of the things that got us really excited about the idea of Rainworks is, we know we can't fix that, but we can maybe help a little bit, where we take the thing that is causing the dreariness, the rain, and then we use that to create something positive. Almost every rainwork we make is like, we try to make it fun to see, whether it's witty or inspirational or amusing or just aesthetically pleasing. Like, our mission is to give people a surprise on a rainy day. And so that surprise, when you see something on the sidewalk that you walk by every day, but now it's raining and now there's something new there, that surprise, we think, can have, it's a little thing, but oftentimes the little things are what can affect a mood the most when something special happens. And so, yeah, we get really excited for the rain now, which is something that I never used to do. But the fact that, like, getting to make this rain-activated art, like, uses the rain in this new way to know where we look forward to it, it's very motivating to want to give that feeling to other people, so that other people have reasons to look forward to it. And so I'm very much an optimist. I love finding bright sides or ways to turn things around. Because honestly, I just really like having fun.
Well, I think it's interesting because
I want to make fun for other people.
well, this notion of right transformation and the idea that you're in a way marking the city, you're doing something to counteract the rain, to create a moment of joy. Have you ever thought about using it in an application where it's not like an object on the sidewalk, but an actual transformation of a space or a moment within the city? Does that make sense? At a larger scale.
Large scale. So a lot of our frameworks are like little pieces. They take up maybe a sidewalk square, and you look at it and you go on. But some of our longer term goals are hopefully to work with the city to say transform an entire park. Because I think the feeling of being surrounded by something can have a really profound impact on like a mood or a feeling. So creating a feeling of suddenly being immersed in a work of art that is like ethereal, it's not always there, is something I would be really excited for and I think could really make other people smile. But it's something that will take a lot of planning, but it is something that we want to implement in Seattle in the future.
Where can we find your art?
We have a map on our website. If you Google Rainworks and click on our website, you'll see the map.
Okay.
Oh, there's a question over there.
Oh, yes, please.
My question is to the landscape architect, Jordan. I recently saw on PBS a show about 10 parks that changed the world. And they focused on Gasworks Park. And I was fascinated with the concept of they did not remediate the land. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Mm-hmm. The land was not remediated. The architect decided the rain would accomplish the remediation, and it reduced the expenses, okay? So it goes the Kite Hill, which is in fact a toxic dump, and decided that the rain would take care of it. So I have two questions. One, I think it's interesting, it's Kite Hill, which doesn't work with the rain. There's a contradiction in the rain. Has it worked? Has it succeeded in remediating what contaminated soil was placed there? And secondly, has rain been looked at as a way to remediate toxic waste rather than hiring bulldozer to shovel it to the next county?
Yeah, good questions, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to fully answer them, but maybe I can kind of add a little bit of context to them, perhaps. So your first question, I think, is about Kite Hill and that particular installation and how, whether or not the theory that rain percolating through that soil would be a good way of cleaning the contamination of the soil. And so I to be honest, I don't know the science of that particular installation or the technical aspects of that, but just from what general knowledge I know, it feels like the percolation of the water through that soil is it's probably going to clean the soil, but the water that comes out of that and makes its way into the body of water that's next to it might not be so good for that body of water. So I think it's all kind of part of a cycle, right? And it's all connected. And so, these things are very, we're still learning about them, I would say. And, there's probably a theory about that at the time, and it may be proven to be not the ideal situation. But what I can say is, rather than having, since the water is percolating through the soil, there is science to back up the idea that the soil can incorporate some of those pollutants and also clean the water as it goes through it. So in a sense, I think it probably has some benefit to the environment, but it's in comparison to having that water hit a paved surface and run straight into the Lake Union that's right there. So I don't know if that helps.
So like rain garden. It'd be a rain garden.
Yeah, it's like a rain garden, but
So rain gardens were on the premise that it would make things beautiful, but it's the same principle. It's just filtering dirty water that still gets partially dirty.
Exactly,
Partially
yeah.
clean,
It
partially-
gets slowed down, so it doesn't overwhelm the system, and it also gets cleaned up a little bit from the rain gardens. And what was the second part of the question?
Has anybody else adopted that kind of thinking and technology?
Oh, right, yeah, so,
Landscape design.
right. So I think rain gardens and bioretention planters are certainly related to that. The other piece of that I haven't actually experienced in my own projects, but I've read about it, is mycological purification of soil contaminants. So that's has to do with the mushrooms that can grow in the soil and the fungus that kind of is associated with plants. And so there are ways that you can pull the contaminants out of the soil using fungus, but it's not purely just from the rainwater.
Well, I'm going to play off that question actually. It's interesting because I think from like an architectural point of view and a landscape architecture point of view, how we're maybe taught or how we first approach dealing with rain is the notion of shedding it and moving it away from our buildings, or glorifying the movement and collection of water. But it's interesting to riff off the idea of thinking how else can we respond to rain, because rain does so much more than just fall, right? It's so sensory if you actually think about it. Are there any moments that you've done in design or have heard about where we think differently about rain's aspect, whether it's after the rain, before the rain, or thinking about it in a different way, not just as an act of movement? Does that make sense? Does anything come to mind?
Sure. I can, you know what, you have the little slide changing device, yeah. You can keep going, there you go, right here. So on the left here, this is a project that my office is working on right now. It's in construction. And the top and bottom image are one that's just like a graphic rendering of the design. This is the Georgetown Wet Weather Treatment Center. So this is an infrastructural project for King County. And you know, the top is just kind of a view, a sketch, a drawing, but the bottom is a diagram showing all the different ways that water is moving through this site. And I think it's a particularly interesting model because, well, for one thing, the whole point of the structure itself is all to handle the rainwater that's moving through the pipes of the city and coming into this treatment plant, basically, that kind of processes the water and cleans it and moves it through onto the next part of its cycle. But then also the site itself, the landscape and the building are all designed in a way to take that water that's landing directly on the site and use it or mitigate it or treat it or clean it in a better way. So, and one of the things that I was going to point out is just on the front corner, I don't know if you can really tell from the drawing, but there's an art piece on this particular project that takes the rainwater, or essentially it uses recycled rainwater, but the artist has developed a way of essentially recreating a rain event that's happened previously, essentially. So they take the rainwater and then in this contained environment on this art sculpture, they recreate that rain event after the fact.
You know what kind of concrete?
Certainly some permeable concrete. Do you like permeable concrete?
I really do.
Me too.
That's a fun story.
You want to share something?
This rain indirectly has really changed the way I view architecture in one extremely specific way. And that is when I walk around, I just look at the ground and the concrete all around me, because we need, for our art, like the kind of concrete that darkens when it gets wet. It's the contrast between wet and dry. But that has really turned me like very aware of like all of the surfaces that are around me. And oftentimes, if I have a water bottle, you might see me on a street corner just like, oh, okay. Seeing if something darkens, and trying to get that intuition of like, you know, whether this would be a good place for art or not. And it always breaks my heart when it doesn't change color, but sad parts. But yeah, it's a very like niche situation, but it is something that's happened in my life that was kind of novel for me.
Is there a technology to add color to your art?
Given that if the concrete is colored and it still changes color when it gets wet, that's what would do it. But the actual thing itself
It's really just the contrast.
it really just blocks the water from getting in. But we're working on it. Coming soon.
Well, going back to the city notion here, so rainy season hits in Seattle, right? And this notion of getting cozy, right? Returning to the confines of the house and almost glorying in the fact that you don't have to be outside. Do you think Seattleites engage with the built environment of the city in a different way when it's raining? Or do we just not venture out into the city anymore?
Yeah, that's a great question. Y'all been to University Village, the outdoor mall in Northeast Seattle? When I bring people from out of town, I live nearby there, and we go there, they're always like, why did Seattle make an outdoor mall? This is strange. And there's a lot of really nice stores, and I don't get it. And I realized they had a point. Also in University Village, they have these bins with umbrellas, except no one ever uses them. And I know I'm not crazy here, it's like nobody uses them. I think there's this pride. I mean, when you're a newcomer, one of the first things you hear is that, oh my God, I can't wear an umbrella, or people know I'm from California, I have to use the jackets, and I think a lot of people that is the mark of a local. It's like, you're gonna go out anyway, you're gonna walk anyway, you're gonna bike anyway, you're gonna bus anyway, you're gonna stand in the rain, doesn't matter if there's a cover or not anyway. Which actually gets me to the snow, because what is snow except for frozen rain? And I think one of the marks of how much Seattle loves rain is how it cannot handle snow. There's actually a local band called Taco Cat, and they have a song called City Cannot Handle Snow, and it's a really good song. So check it out. But it's true. I mean, we have these hills, and there's a sense of the city getting washed all the time. We're green, we're environmentally friendly. The grass is always like this bright shade of green. We live in that place. I'm from the Northeast, and the grass is brown. It's frozen, and in the summer it like bakes and whatever. But here it's green, and it's just so fresh. But the city turns these hills of sort of washing away into just terrible death traps, and we don't know how to handle it, and I find it just fascinating. But yeah, I think you see it in the outdoor culture too. Gene Balk of the Seattle Times learned, I might get this slightly wrong, but I think since 2010, it's like 56% more people say that they have hiked at least once in the last 6 months in Seattle. So the outdoor culture has gone way up. He calls it the Instagram effect, which it might be because you see all these photos of hikes from your friends, oh my God. I gotta go. So yeah, I don't think it changes all that much. I think when it is rainy and gray, if you're really of this place, you're gonna find a way to go outside anyway and make the most of it.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned New Village, because I was just talking to my mom, and I was telling her I was going to go to this rain lecture, and she's like, oh, are you going to talk about shopping malls? And she actually specifically was like, well, how come New Village works but Redmond Town Center doesn't?
That's a great point. Yeah, Redmond Town Center is totally, yeah.
And I don't know, is it like an urban, suburban thing? Is it car culture versus pedestrian culture? I don't know. Is that...
I cannot answer that. I think it might be pedestrian culture versus car culture. I think that might be part of it, but I don't know. That's a wonderful mystery. I'm not sure.
Does anybody know? I've never even been there, so I can't.
People need to be outside at U Village, but they don't need to get wet if they stay underneath of the canopies. And that's a little bit of a difference. I don't mind getting cold, I'll wear a warm coat, but I don't want to get wet.
Yeah. I get wet every time I go.
Well, I wanted to say one of the benefits, probably a lot of you are from a four-season home. You grew up somewhere like Vermont, or where you really have these clear definitions of seasons. And again, here it's a little blurry. And one of the beauties of this, our winter season is like you actually can't. It's not that cold.
Yeah.
So really, 40 degrees or 45, in June that sucks, but you do get used to it, and you can actually operate. And when you go back to your slide with the you had the outdoor space, like picnic tables and rooftops. Yeah, the previous one. So, I mean, I really, as I kind of watch the city change and grow, I hope we have more places like this, because, you know, one thing that I've noticed, like when you go to Vancouver or you're traveling abroad, maybe in Scandinavian countries, there's a lot more outdoor space that is kind of, you can utilize it throughout the year. And I think Seattle, it's a great opportunity for us here. It's like, you could be, you know, we could have been outside on a patio covered, maybe with some heaters, you know, having a nice meal or just, you know, some drinks or something, doing things outside in public places a little bit more, you know, more often. And I think that would be really, really cool. I think it's a place that we could do more.
Yeah.
I mean, I think certainly people get out and hike, and I think that is one of those things you're like, I'm going no matter what, you know, it's like just, you're not gonna be held back. But I like the idea that we can have like maybe these public places. And you know, it's sort of the flip side of the going in to the third place to hunker down over coffee or whatever, but why not do it outside? And I do think that is one of the appeals of somewhere like a U Village, is like, we like to be outside. I think as humans, we actually really love to be out in nature and maybe a little bit more connected to the outside versus just, you know, I mean, like Northgate's like the worst example. Just like drive there and you're just inside and oh my God, it's horrible. So, you know, I'm gonna try to be somewhere where there's a little contrast. So.
Well, it also pulls to mind this notion of like, what is rain comfort? I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly, but for instance, you were saying how you hate to get wet. But I also find there's a certain attitude towards rain in terms of garments in Seattle. You have the Gore-Tex camp, but then you have like the Filson camp, who's okay with that wool hat and just letting it soak in until it reaches a point of discomfort, and then I don't know I don't know what happens with that group. I'm actually the umbrella group, but yes.
Following up on what you're saying about that, this kind of a concept, I've noticed, I walk a lot from Belltown down to here, down First Avenue, and over the years it's gotten a lot more sidewalk, outdoor sitting friendly. You know, the city's allowing more people to have outdoor space and the restaurants, and it's really amazing to me that I can walk from Belltown down First Avenue at 8 o'clock at night in December or January or November, and there's people sitting outside enjoying their cafes in the rain.
Concrete in Belltown is great, by the way.
No, come back to Bell Street. We want that.
It's not out of there.
But I think that's really interesting from like an urban position or even like a garment position. But I'm trying to imagine a moment in architecture where we have that. It's like we're okay of letting that little bit of spray into the building or opening up the sides of the building. I don't know. I'm not yet asking a question of anyone here. Yes, please.
I think one of the perfect examples would be, I mean, it's a 20-year-old example now, but Safeco Field or now T-Mobile Park, you know, where it's just a revolutionary concept coming from the kingdom, where we had to be indoors, we had to be closed off from the environment, you know, whereas now we want to be a different city that can enjoy the summer. We want to be a city that can show off our baseball team or show off our environments, but at the same time recognize that rain does exist, you know, and that rain delays in baseball are a possibility, and that here we can create an environment that allows for both of these aspects, and we can kind of manipulate it to a degree where, yes, rain will exist, you can come indoors and you can be safe from that and still enjoy this, while it's not a fully enclosed structure either. Rain can come in from the sides, you can experience that to a degree, but you still, you get the best of both worlds, or the worst, however you look at it, but you know, it's some way to kind of manipulate the environment and work with what you're given.
I think hearing y'all say this makes me realize that I think part of it is we want to share the space and the air with such the beautiful surroundings we have. I mean, every time I cross the 520 bridge in summer and you see the bald eagle on the lampposts, anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Oh my God. We're just seeing on either side of that bridge, and you've got the Cascades and the Olympics, and you've got lakes everywhere. When I first moved here, I'm terrible at knowing where I'm going. And in other places that I've lived, it was always like, well, do you know where the water is? Like downhill is toward the water, do you know where the water is? That doesn't work here. There's too much water. There's just too much water, and there's too much terrain, and it's so beautiful. I wonder if it were kind of uglier, maybe we would be building Northgate instead of New Village. You know what I mean? But I think we want to see, and you know, you guys know about it, you know, Is the Mountain Out? Is a very popular Twitter account, by the way. Yeah, check it out, is the mountain now. And he tweets a photo of, do you see Mount Rainier, do you not see Mount Rainier? And he says most of his followers are not even in Seattle, they're people who used to live here and want to stay connected to that natural touch point, which I think is so beautiful.
Wait, there was a question about, yes, please.
Yeah, back 15 years ago, I went to your restaurant, Mark, and I felt it was very enclosed. You cannot pretty much, if I remember, see outside. So how would you redo it if you have all the money in the world now? Instead of changing your attitude about Seattle and the
Sure. Well, we actually moved 4 years ago. So Lark is in a new space in the same neighborhood. We're just kind of on another side of Seattle University. But the restaurant got bigger, and it was part of the evolution of where we were at. 10-year-old restaurant. We wanted to reinvigorate and kind of reinvent ourselves. And so we actually echoed a lot of those warm and cozy elements of the original restaurant, which is the 90-year-old wood floor and the open beams, the real, like 100-year-old trees, things that just don't exist anymore. So a lot of that is echoed in this new space, some of the rawness, but then it's actually a more grand space. It's got double height windows, so 30-foot windows, and so that actually has a much greater sense of the environment. You feel much more connected to the environment. So instead of one little set of box windows up only in the front and a couple on the side, you've got really almost 3 sides of southern exposure. And granted the view is up the IHOP, but you can still see trees. You can see some of the spires and such from Seattle University, but you also can see the sky. So you do get a sense of a little bit more of like you're connected to the environment, and so it's pretty cool. I was going to say one of the things, kind of getting back to that idea of how people's rhythms throughout the year. Certainly when it's dark at 4:30 in December, and it stays like that way for quite a while, there's a real different way that people come and enjoy the restaurant. You get the sense that people are kind of dashing from the office or wherever work is, and they're coming to the they want to get to the bar and shake off their Gore-Tex and settle into a cocktail and then maybe dinner with friends, versus sort of the leisurely stroll in at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, in the middle of July or June, where there's a different sense of the way people operate when they go to restaurants, and I think it's driven really by the climate. So.
Thank you. So I wanted to touch on something that you were asking about, about the idea of bringing rain indoors or somewhat indoors, or kind of how does that happen in some cases. And one example that I think is interesting about that is, a lot of times we have to do these, as I was mentioning before, the bioretention planters that they're consistent throughout the city these days. It's part of the code that we need to meet to clean the stormwater that comes off the surfaces of the site and the building. And so particularly roof water that's coming off the roof of the building, we send these to these planters, but it also creates an opportunity in spaces that are underneath overhangs, because, and you might see this around the city, but in the winter, since there's no rain coming down in those spaces, those plants aren't going to get any water because the irrigation system is essentially turned off during the winter in case it freezes. And so one of the issues is, how do you water plants when they're under an overhang, or without having someone have to come out with a hose or a sprayer or a watering can to water the plants. And so it's kind of bringing that water from the roof under the overhangs into the eaves, into the spaces that are more adjacent to the entries and the sort of more occupied spaces of the building, and also kind of creates a second opportunity of how do you get that water throughout that planter, rather than just having it come into one spot and water the plants around that one spot at like a, where it comes out of the downspout. How do you kind of spread that water out? And so a lot of some of the cooler details, construction details that we do, are sometimes these what we call level spreaders, where they take the water and kind of gather it and let it slowly percolate out over the whole system of the planting. So
Well, it's interesting because I think we keep going back to this idea of rain's tactility in a way, how it is, we're responding to it through the overhang or it's the drip-like qualities or what have you. And I found when I was in the experience of like rain in the desert is so sensory related. There's like the sounds that are evoked by it. There's the scents that emerge, the pressures in the air, and you can really feel it in all your senses. And I'm wondering if Seattle has that rain quality, and as designers, besides just thinking about it in terms of its physicality, are we taking advantage of those qualities? Does that make sense? Maybe not really. No.
I have a candle vendor send me a rain-scented candle.
No, that's nice. So for instance, Dan Corson is an artist and he did an installation out in, I think it's in Maple Valley, and it's called Rain Drums, and literally it's just a series of drums in the landscape to, obviously, that are, when it rains, it heightens the sound of the rain, right? So that's one way you can take advantage of the different quality of it. But I keep thinking about smell or the smell of the meal and those stages, but how are we, and maybe we're just not, but how are we really challenging what it means to rain and rain into the city, and how do we as designers respond to that? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So maybe the 6th month that I was in Seattle, I ended up chatting with some new friends and talking about the rain, because that's what you do when you're new to the city. It's like you just draw from a hat, and that's one thing you talk about. And this person that I talked to, who was from here, just got really serious, because he takes it very personally, this idea that rain is bad, and he wants to fight it. And he told me, and I never forgot, that it has an aural beauty, A-U-R-A-L. And he said, sit in your car when it's raining, close your eyes, and tell me that the rain isn't awesome. And I was like, whoa. And he was right. Rain drums, car roofs are rain drums. And so sometimes when I, feel like, oh, it's raining, I gotta open the door and I gotta walk in the rain, I remember, his name was Lauren, I remember what he said. And it's really nice. You just kind of close your eyes and you feel it, and there's this rhythm, and there's this dripping and this pounding, and it's beautiful. So, yeah, if designers want to build that into some other spaces, I'm down.
I was actually thinking, besides my very specific business, one of my favorite things about the rain, just generally speaking, is when you can hear it. And sometimes when it's really raining outside and I'm in my house, I wish that there wasn't so much insulation in the attic, because then I could hear it hitting the roof better. But yeah, being in the car and sitting in there is one of my favorite things, the tin roof effect and all that. And I think it would actually be incredible if designers created spaces, especially like this, where you're indoors but out, where they intentionally use materials on the roof to reverberate or echo, or maybe even if it's misting, so it's not falling hard enough, have a layer above where the mist can collect and then fall out of droplet areas, little holes, so that when it hits the surface, it actually makes this noise no matter what. I think that would be awesome. I would hang out there for hours. Let's do it.
I don't know if anybody else wants to tackle that. It's interesting that we do form such a nostalgia, I think, for weather, for certain types of weather, but yes.
I'll add real quick that there's somebody in the UK who's reached out to us who is trying to make a rainwork piano, where they're using moisture sensors to make it, and motion sensors to make it so if you move in front of the various keys on the rainwork piano on a rainy day, it will play the different notes. And that's something they're working on right now, so hopefully we'll see the outcome of it soon.
Wow. That's really cool. There's a hand in the back. Thank you.
Just wondering, so when you got back from your trip, you were kind of disappointed that you hadn't encountered any brilliant architectural rain-grabbing ideas. But since then, you must be talking about it all the time. And were there any people who said, "Oh, you should have gone here. They have this incredible."
Not yet. Anybody? No, yeah. It's I think one of my favorite things about this subject was everybody brings to the table a story about rain, which I found really fascinating. We all have that experience that's really individual, this notion that rain is almost a character in our lives. And I think when I got back and people were asking me about the journey, my favorite thing was to hear all these different stories And then I couldn't help imagining, you know, what if we were designing for that story or turning that story into an architectural act? Like, what would that look like? But yeah, I haven't found quite yet any projects that are really challenging. You know, you see super beautiful projects out there that it's all about a roofscape that's about funneling water and collecting it in certain areas, and they're wonderful, and you wish you would have done it. But I haven't quite found that project where it's like, damn, they really thought differently about rain. Like, what if it was a house that was designed to just capture the smell after the rain, and it elevated into like these rooms that were gardens or something? I don't even know, but I haven't found it yet. So, yes, please.
Like, I just kind of love my childhood in Japan, where this is quite normalized, where like a wall could be made of paper, like you don't resist weather. So a couple questions, like unrelated questions to each other. One, like sort of what indigenous practices around rain and weather were studied, and two, this conversation feels like bizarrely wholesome. As someone who's spent time in, I guess, what we might consider humid climates, which might include rain or humidity outside of coldness, and that can create a very different reaction to it. I'm thinking about like wet t-shirt contests, or like, you know, like essentially like your artwork on the sidewalk is that, but like with like this really cute sort of crowdfunding.
Family friendly.
I feel like in the Northwest there can be this sort of uptightness around climate, and I started just messing with it by even just biking to work and showing up with like wet hair and you know to meetings and
Well, I think it's really interesting that you pointed out this notion of wholesomeness of rain, because to a certain degree, Seattle's rain is wholesome. You know, we don't think about it in the terms of like a flash flood, right? And I think that highlights again how specific rain is to its place, and that design in a way, you know, should respond to it, or maybe it already does. But yeah, it's perhaps our conversation is a little bit more inclined to Seattle's gray versus the downpours that happen in Colorado that raise the Platte River, and next thing you know, the city's flooded. So that's, you know, it's been interesting. Wait, so did you want? No, okay. But to play off that notion of like, yeah, what indigenous or what cultures have played to rain before. I mean, I haven't done studies into that. My little fellowship didn't go in that direction yet, per se. But the first thing that comes to mind is ancient Rome. I think the word was the impluvium. Am I correct? Where literally they were pools in the house to bring in the water and collect it for. That's what you used, right? So that notion of embracing the rain and pulling it in, you know, from a functionality position, I think that's one application. But yeah, I think that would be fascinating to explore that. I think that would be, can I get some more funding for that? Yeah.
Yeah, talk to me after this.
Well, thank you.
For real.
Okay, well, no, seriously. But anyway, so let's see here. Anybody else have a question while I gather my thoughts? Yes, thank you.
I have another comment about the oral quality of rain, and that is when I walk in the rain with my foot up, it reminds me of being in a tent backpacking in the rain. And it's wonderful. I live in a retirement community. They all think I'm nuts. You're going out for a walk in the rain. I said, yeah.
Nice. Let's see, those are great questions. Oh, yes, please.
Right, I think, once again, we're talking about Seattle. But I grew up in West Virginia, where rain was terror.
Yeah.
The sound of rain, you all, think of as comforting.
Yeah.
But, so it's a very interesting regional difference. Whereas I worked with clients who had terrible PTSD every time they heard rain on the roof, because they were part of the Buffalo Creek disaster, where rain came down in torrents or heavily, and 211 people died in 15 minutes as it swept through Buffalo Creek Holler. So her whole family was swept away. And so those survivors of Buffalo Creek were studied for their post-traumatic stress disorder by Kai Erickson, first civilian study. And so rain was terror. Yeah. Okay. And so I think that's another sort of flip side of the regional Northwest, where it is death. It's death and destruction, and a symptom of PTSD is to hear the rain.
I'm going to ask you another question. This is going to be hard. Do you think the way in which cities are constructed in West Virginia, is that what you said, or the designs respond to that sense of terror, or is it something we haven't really
Well, you
thought
see their
about.
cities, these are hollers, huh? They're hollers. You know hollers? Cultural. Hollers are small communities between the mountains.
Oh, okay.
So there's a house there, and then there's a house about 25 feet over here, and the creek runs down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, I didn't drink.
No, I got it.
Yeah, but there certainly are cities on, specifically the Ohio River, where I grew up with flood walls.
Mm-hmm.
So the Corps of Engineers, after 37, the flood came into the city.
Mm-hmm.
So at the other end of town, there's big, huge gates. They're concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you put a happy face on.
Mm-hmm.
But the big, huge flood walls. And then the gates, when the river starts to rise, so a gate would be as wide as this building. And so, yeah, there are structures. That's the structural way to deal with torrent of rain.
It's incredible to think about.
It's narrow, so it just flows.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always think about this too when you encounter a rain that is transformative, that is powerful, and has the ability to physically move Earth, right?
And people.
And everything around it. It's treated like the destroyer. And I often wonder, have we ever done a moment in design where we have embraced that or thought about it less in a defensive way, but really created a moment where something's revealed or altered within the city itself?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Sorry. Or like the city itself changes, like the infrastructure of the city changes to respond to it and not keep it out, but something new emerges from it. Yes, in the back.
I actually had a similar comment which I was going to make before she did. I come from India where there are monsoon rains for 4 months. It's like really heavy downpours constantly for 4 months. And can be destructive, people die every year, things flood. And that's the rain I grew up with. And then I come here and it's this light, beautiful drizzle. And the sound of it, the tapping of it while I'm at home and it's raining, it's just so beautiful. And it doesn't cause any harm to anyone. So I just wanted to point out that contrast. And one main contrast that affects architecture in India is that there are only concrete buildings. There cannot be wood buildings because they cannot handle the pressure of the rain. And these concrete buildings are not repainted often. Even the most beautiful buildings start looking really dirty very soon because of the effect of the rain every single year. So I just wanted to point that out. It wasn't really a question.
Well, it's again the notion we're fighting against rain still. You know, we have to be defensive, but in the end, rain's gonna win, right? So, yeah, please.
A comment about the friendliness of Seattle rain.
Yeah.
Which is that you're inhabiting it in this moment as a person on the surface, it can seem really funny, but the issue of toxic stormwater is a huge issue that's kind of a slow disaster happening in Seattle. So the sort of dynamic adaptation of landscape to the dynamic stormwater is like addressing that issue, I guess, in a defensive way. Mm-hmm. But we also need that here because it's not only cool stuff. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to point that out. And then thinking of like infrastructure that reacts to rain comes to mind is like the LA River project. It's like a vision by Miller and Associates in LA because they get those flash floods and like a way to deal with dynamic rain in a transformative way on like a city scale.
Yeah. I want to check that out. Any other questions in the room here?
I have a question,
Yes.
but maybe it's a comment, and I think it's maybe in some ways related to the niceness of the Seattle rain. And just for a little bit of context, I'm from Miami and I lived in Louisiana before I moved here. And so I would maybe say to the question about where is there architecture that responds to rain, there's plenty, it's just maybe not beautiful. And so it doesn't tackle that in sort of what does the set mean to me, but it's much more practical. So you could go to any tent village and see architectural response to rain, or you could go to any of these places that flood and look at their stilts, or look at the material choices and see how they age, or see how people who subsist on the land build architecture to capture and transport water. So I think it's everywhere. It's just not maybe
poetic or I've written about in that way, but and I also think it's important to think like because it rains and so like there's something else that's happening, and so maybe there's an architectural response that's tackling one or two or three or a million things at once, and it is a response to rain, but it's maybe presented in that openly or just based on this other things.
It's a great comment. Thank you. Oh, we have another one. Yes.
Oh yeah, just one more to add on to. I've lived in New Orleans. I grew up here with the wholesome Seattle rain, but in New Orleans. When I was there was an interesting project called Living with Water. David Wagner, I think, was the lead, and trying to learn from the Dutch on how to live with water and not just have the gray infrastructure that pumps the water out, but have green infrastructure, swales, and learn to maybe some canals, things like that, to respond and make it beautiful and something that you look forward to versus dread. And the difference when I was there, and my wife is a teacher, that a lot of people would call out from school on days when it rained, which is so important to me because it's just like you said, we live with it. And but there it does, floods, flash flooding, and you have to, people are moving their cars to higher ground, and so yeah, just the differences there. And then I think that Living with Water project and the Dutch dialogues, like trying to think about how to incorporate it more into the city of New Orleans and similar topographies like that, instead of just getting rid of it and pretending it's not a thing, but becomes a much bigger thing, perhaps.
I love this dialogue because it just points out the complexity around rain. I know, I love this audience too. Like, I don't have to do anything. Yes,
Sorry. Have you think about if the global warming has affecting a lot of the rain in Seattle and even in other cities, and how the architecture design will affecting, because the rain is pretty much the water from the ground and goes back to the sky and coming down. So we have more, no offense, but if we have more concrete in the city, so we'll stop the rain going up to the sky, which is will creating more disaster in the earth. So do you think as designers we can provide with more organic materials that to helping like the natural movement of the rain going up and for the cycling?
Does anybody want to tackle this one? Yeah?
So,
that one's better to side actually.
Okay.
Switch.
Your time check.
So, a couple things in response to your questions or comments. Certainly there's an effort and there's codes and requirements made that are evolving and getting more strict in the city of Seattle and the surrounding region about how much impervious pavement you can put on any site. So I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but it basically means how much pavement that doesn't allow water to percolate down through the paving and into the ground or into sometimes it will go more slowly into a pipe that's underground essentially, but it's a way of slowing down the process of the water making its way from the paving into the closest or the downstream body of water where it would typically go. And so that's a way of reducing that pollution runoff into those bodies of water. So that's certainly one thing, and that's a constant battle and a constant effort. And I think we're probably losing that battle, but we're trying to improve our building practices in response to that. And the other element that I wanted to touch on, trying to remember exactly what it was now, but it was the climate change aspect of the rain and different areas. And it's definitely something that we've noticed as professionals, in the sense that you talk about the way we talk about rain is in like 100-year storm, let's say, or a 20-year storm, and we kind of build to those quantities of water that would be happening during those types of events. But more and more we find that the 100-year storm, quote unquote, happens every 5 years or every 3 years or something like that. And I think that's certainly, at least from what I understand, related to climate change and the
sort of intensity of weather patterns that results from the added heat.
You had a question.
I just had a comment because there's stories of torrential rain. I used to live out in Duval, which is not that far from here, but it's right along the Snoqualmie River, and the Army Corps of Engineers did a lot of design work in the upper part of that river to save the city of Snoqualmie, the Snoqualmie Bridge and all that, but it pushed the water farther down faster. So I used to work in Bothell, and I would make sure I always checked the rising river, which would be upper Tolt waterways, so that I could get home, or else the entire area would be flooded out and I wouldn't be able to make home. So it was kind of like a sort of a danger scenario where you always had to keep track of it. And actually, where I worked in Bothell, before the Army Corps of Engineers came in to actually redo the entire slough, got like 3 feet of water throughout the entire area, and we were all scrambling to sort of like make it out before everybody got flooded in to the office park.
See, everybody has their rain story, I love it. So I'm just going to do a quick time check here. We might need to.
4 minutes.
We got 4 minutes. Any other questions in the audience? I don't want to. Yes.
So, I think of Seattle as a very indoor culture. Like, we're not really rollerblading out on the beach all year round. Like, people, the weather gets cold, the weather gets wet, and people go indoors. And, like, that's really, like, kind of where our culture incubates. We're looking at some examples of how kind of that's changing or that's expanding with these sort of indoor-outdoor spaces that get you a little closer to these elements. I'm just curious, what we're looking at now are outdoor spaces with, this beautiful piece of low technology, a roof over it, and it solves a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. But what else? What are some other solutions? What are people trying, specifically for Seattle's climate,
in an interior sense?
In an interior sense, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. Does anybody have a response to that? Interesting.
We love green
In terms
walls.
of,
Sorry?
Green walls. Everybody wants a green wall.
Green wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I don't know if anybody has a response up here. I think that's a really interesting question that, again, we're always talking about the envelope of the building, our skin as how we respond to rain, instead of the interior spaces, even though we are a culture that loves to engage with the outdoors. So what would a design act like that look like, right? How would you utilize the rain as a conceptual driver for an interior space? I'm not sure, but I think it's a great query.
And I mean, I also there's outdoor space, there's indoor space, but there's a lot of flexibility in between. Like these that we're looking at right now are a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. And is that idea what's driving this new development of spaces, or could it be something totally new?
Well, can I? One thing that I find interesting is sort of the sort of public space and private space. So, as Seattle grows and develops, there's a huge focus on real estate and maximizing value, and so is the developer going to put a lot of time and energy into that kind of idea?
Is that 4 minutes?
Oh.
Is that
but maybe it's going to take the city putting some time and energy into a project like that. Like, I think of Sandpoint, the old Navy base. You've got these huge, hangars, which could be an amazing place to have. You just open up both ends of the door, and it feels like you're outside, but you can have you can have a variety of activities happening that are sort of maybe a little more inclusive with that. In Denmark, in Copenhagen, they took this area that was basically the docks, like it would be like the Seattle waterfront, with again a giant hangar-like building on it, and instead of turning it into luxury condos, for example, it's a giant food hall, like giant, and there's 50 different little businesses in there, and it would be like having your food truck scene under one big roof. You can walk freely in it, all around this interior space. It's a really awesome gathering space. So I don't know, I feel like some of that kind of thing is going to take public comment dollars to make it happen. I don't know.
Well, I think what's
But
really
again,
interesting about it, and it plays to your comment about like how do we define interior and exterior, and challenging those notions, especially when we come from a place that loves to define the skin, and also beginning to challenge what is comfort, and that will allow that those edges to blur even more. So.
we're lucky we're not in a hurricane.
Yeah.
So that looks like we would not be having this discussion.
Yeah, it's a different type of brain. Awesome. Well, I think that's going to be it then. Thank you everybody for coming, and thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, I will.